Hello and welcome to the podcast that is thinking of having £1 million rebrand of its badge, but can't be doing with Roman numerals and circles that represent the local roundabouts. Just give us a big bold font written in the club colours inside a massive football. It's the big man up top.
What are you on about here?
I thought you might say that.
That was
Joe.
a very wordy intro. Can you give us some context?
Yeah,
maybe?
Did you see that Milton Keynes Dons have had a rebrand on their badge? They've had a new badge that basically just looks like the old badge but with a circle around it.
They're all doing that these days, aren't they? Everyone's just putting their badge into a circle. What does this one look like?
Well, essentially it looks like the old one inside a circle.
Okay.
And the circle represents the roundabouts of the local area.
It's known for its roundabouts, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And also, rather hilariously, the year of its founding, the club's founding, which was what, 2004?
Definitely mid-2000s, wasn't it?
Is written in Roman numerals, Joe, which feels a little on the nose, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think anything past 2000 looks good in Roman numerals.
Exactly. And there was quite an amusing comeback from local rivals to Stoke City, Port Vale, who did their own version of this, very much mocking it. Good. And it was good stuff.
I look forward to looking that up after we've listened to this podcast, Ed.
Yes, what are we going to chat about today, Joe?
We're going to cover a lot of things today, Ed. We're going to be talking about youth and how we view young people. We're also going to be talking about the race for Europe.
Yes, we are.
And we are also going to discuss probably the highest profile story of the weekend is Trent Alexander Arnold's reception at Anfield on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get stuck into that. But shall we start with some trivia, Joe?
I think we should, Ed. This week I'm going to be asking you a question, and this is Guess the Player with a Difference. The player will share his first name with the name of a book of the Bible. Now I'm going to try and play by the rules this week, Ed.
Right. It has gone a little Wild West, hasn't it, in the last few weeks?
I think so. The last time I asked you a question, I came up against a lot of sticks. So, are you ready for your question?
I'm ready.
Which English striker who ended his playing career, Ed, he was a player, at an Australian club, represented England at every level, from under 16 to the senior team, and won the UEFA Champions League with 2 different clubs?
So nothing's immediately jumping out at me. I know that we've had a few English players who've gone on to finish in Australia, but
any off the top of your head?
Not particularly. No. They'll come to me though. Don't you worry.
Yeah. After you've had a bit of a Google.
After I've had a bit of a Google. No. Let's talk about the Premier League, Joe. It was all about the race for Europe this weekend, wasn't it?
It was. I don't know if you watched Match of the Day on Saturday.
I did.
Gary Lineker said it was probably the worst Saturday in the history of Match of the Day. It was so boring.
It wasn't great, was it?
It was really dull, as is much of the Premier League at the moment. But Sunday kind of made up for it, I think.
I was going to say, it didn't help that Sunday was so good. These days, more games are happening outside of a Saturday, aren't they, Joe? So, you know what I mean? It's
Saturday 3pms are a thing of the past.
It's unique. It's rare these days to have a Saturday 3 o'clock.
Well, let's
kickoff.
start at the City Ground. Nottingham Forest 2, Leicester 2. And this was a big missed opportunity for Nottingham Forest, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Leicester taking the lead in this one through Connor Cody. Equaliser from Morgan Gibbs-White. And then just what a goal.
Oh, my word.
From Chris Wood to put Forest 2-1 up. Just explain the goal, Joe, for anyone who didn't hear it.
Well, just think of the 90s, Ed, and you can picture it. This was a fantastic early cross from Morgan Gibbs-White on the right. Chris Wood, the only way to describe his header is that he absolutely buried it into the bottom corner. There was no doubt he was going to miss this. It was a classic Chris Wood goal of this season.
It felt like if Alan Shearer had gone to Man United.
Oh, imagine.
It would have been a Beckham cross from the right, Alan Shearer burying England, maybe. Maybe. They played together, didn't they?
Could be England, yeah.
But yeah, it was a really, really great throwback goal. Forest will be really frustrated to have conceded a late equaliser in this one. It wasn't a great last-minute goal to concede or late goal to concede, was it?
No, it wasn't. I think this game it's not the kind of game Forest have done well in this season.
No.
They thrive when they don't have the ball and very much play on the counter-attack with their pacey wingers. This game, you're at home to Leicester, relegated Leicester. You have to take initiative. You have more of the ball. And they're actually not very good going behind Forest. Their tactic has kind of been score and defend that lead.
Yeah.
And obviously they weren't able to do that in this game. It takes a lot of mentality to come from behind. They took the lead, but then to defend that lead, they just weren't able to do it.
Now, so much of the story around this game actually wasn't really to do with sort of, the overall score, because Forest have still qualified for Europe off the back of this.
They have, and I think this is a bit of a throwback to what we spoke about last week. We had this conversation about what defines a successful season, and having a bit of perspective, taking that step back, have you had a good season? Forest obviously had a brilliant season. This draw confirms that they will be playing in Europe next year, and that is an absolutely massive success for them. But they seemed really dejected at the end of this, which obviously they have ambitions for the Champions League. But start of the season, this is a huge success. They've
done so well and were second and third for so much of the campaign that finishing 6th or 7th will feel like a bad end to the season. But, you're right. It should have been a huge celebration for them and ended up getting a bit sour at the end.
Yeah, we should talk about this incident where Taiwo Awoniyi got injured by kind of colliding with the post. Now, this is something that is kind of that hypothetical situation that has been spoken about all season and the last few years recently, with this whole offside not putting the flag up.
So what happened, Joe?
What happened was the ball was played over the top to Anthony Elanga, and he was quite clearly offside. Obviously, the directive from PGMOL is if you're the assistant referee, you don't put your flag up until the end of play, because VAR might want to go and have a look at it.
So Sian Massey hasn't put her flag up, rightly so.
Rightly, that is what she is meant to do. That is the rules. But the rule is the problem here, that if an injury was to take place, that's where it can be dangerous. And that is what happened here.
Awoniyi's then gone sliding into the far post and has gone literally sliding into the far post.
He's clattered into it.
Really clattered it. That wouldn't have happened had the flag gone up straight away. So there definitely needs to look at that rule there, just for player welfare's sake. That then caused a real awkward end to the game for Forest, didn't it, with substitutions and players receiving treatment and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they decided not to make the substitution. Awoniyi said he can carry on. And this kind of led to an incident right at the end of the game. As you're watching the game finish, the Forest owner, Marinakis, storms onto the pitch in quite a frustrated way.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, quite scandalous, really, that an owner goes onto the pitch. Regardless of what he's saying, he was clearly quite heated in an exchange with Nuno. He's since released a statement saying that he was frustrated with the medical team and the decision. So he was angry, he was frustrated, but it's not a good look going onto the pitch.
No, because obviously there's a bit of frustration in the crowd already. Some Forest fans will feel like that it was 2 points dropped and they've become so close to the Champions League. And so when there's already a bit of tension, the last thing you want is an owner coming out onto the pitch and stoking that up.
Yeah, and he's got a bit of history with this kind of thing. He likes the limelight. But Forest still have a chance to qualify for the Champions League. 2 massive games coming up, including the last day of the season against Chelsea. And that's going to be a huge game.
Can we talk about Leicester bringing on 15-year-old Jeremy Monga?
Yeah, this was quite incredible. 15 years old, looked really good. But we're going to come on to talk about this whole thing of youth and how we view youth. But to me, the sign here that he's a very young person is that he wasn't able to wear the shirt sponsor that Leicester have, who are a betting firm.
Right.
So because he's 15, you can't wear a betting firm or like an alcohol kind of brand if you're under 16.
So he's had to wear the kids' shirt.
Yeah, that's it. And I think to me, that's a sign that he's probably a bit young to be thrown into the spotlight.
Well, absolutely. And there's a whole question about, is this young lad old enough for us to be thrusting him in front of 30,000, 40,000 people, however many the City Ground holds, in that atmosphere and with something on the line. I know not for Leicester, but for Forest there's something on the line. So it's going to be a tense atmosphere.
Yeah, it's going to be heated.
That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid,
It gets quite toxic. Can a 15-year-old handle that? Is it fair to put him in that position?
Well, I think we're going to chat about that a little bit later on, aren't we, Joe? Let's talk about Newcastle against Chelsea. What happened in this one, Joe?
This was kind of marked as the game of the round. 2 teams going for Champions League qualification. And Newcastle just came on top. A professional job, you would say. Every 2-0 win is a professional job. But I think the story of this game is that Chelsea fielded the same starting 11 for 3 games in a row. But this game kind of hinged on a red card incident. This was Nicholas Jackson, went up for a ball. He was adjudged to have elbowed a Newcastle player in the face. You don't think this was a red card, though, do you?
Well, it's not that I think it was definitely not a red card. I think he's gone up to try and leverage himself. The look over his shoulder is to see where the other player is, and then he's been focused on the ball. That's my opinion. And I think that really he has accidentally made this contact. I think a yellow card would have been fair. I think at that point Chelsea is still only 1 down. There's much more of a game left to play.
It's a huge moment, isn't it? Not just in this game, but he's now going to be suspended for the rest of the season in the Premier League, subject to no appeal or anything like that. And they don't have a recognised striker, Chelsea. So it's a huge moment, a huge decision. And I think I would be inclined to agree with you that it's one of those that could go either way quite early on in the game, respectively, and maybe the ref could have given the benefit of the doubt there.
I don't believe he's gone in to hurt him. I think he's gone in to try and be physical. I also don't think he's been overly reckless. Maybe I'm wrong, Joe, but I'm here to give you my opinion.
Well, thank you for doing that, and I'll take it on board.
Chelsea, how are we feeling about the way they've finished the year then?
Well, it's kind of one of those that have Chelsea been any better than last year. A lot of what was good about Chelsea last year kind of centred around Cole Palmer. He was the main man. He was their top scorer. And I don't know if there's been that much improvement. Again, Cole Palmer's fallen off the last half of this season. It's clearly impacted Chelsea's form. They've picked up a little bit, but they could be on for another Conference League finish if things carry on like this.
Yeah. What about Newcastle? Because this was a deserved win for them, wasn't it?
They've had a few runs this season where they've won a lot on the bounce, looked really strong. Obviously had that Carabao Cup win. They actually play Arsenal this weekend, and Newcastle love playing Arsenal.
They do.
They always beat them. They always get under their skin. And if they beat this game, they go second. And I think that would be deserved. I think that's a fair reflection on how the league has been this season.
Southampton, Man City, 0-0.
Oh,
this was not a great spectacle, was it?
Awful games. Somehow managed to be second on Match of the Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, City were very blunt in this game. It was at 3 p.m. on Saturday, so only got to watch the highlights.
Forgetting to cash in their Southampton voucher.
Yeah, come on. And we should say that Southampton, with this point, avoided the record of the lowest points tally in the Premier League.
They've beaten Derby, have they?
They've beaten Derby. They've got 12 points. But yeah, the highlights of this were basically Man City just overhitting a lot of free kicks, a lot of crosses, and missing a lot of chances. The main thing to come out of this game was actually Ruben Dias's comments out of the Man City game.
I missed this. Tell me about this,
Yeah,
Joe.
so we had a post-match interview. This is Ruben Dias, Man City centre-back. He was quoted afterwards saying it was frustrating to play a team like them. They don't even try to play. They're just time-wasting the whole game. I don't even feel like they want to play the game or win the game. They're just sitting around. It's what it is.
Has he not seen them for the whole season up to this point?
I think that's it. The Southampton response, a lot of fans on Twitter were like, mate, we've got 12 points. We can't play football.
What do you want us to do?
What do you want? And this is how you're meant to play these kind of games. Look, Southampton recognise that City are a lot better than them, so they defend. That is how you play the game.
Aston Villa getting an away win at Bournemouth, which was actually a really great result for them, wasn't it?
Really good win, hard place to go. Bournemouth kind of in that place where they could push for Europe, could push for that Conference League place, but Villa went there, 1-0 win, goal from Ollie Watkins on half-time, and this was a really important win for Villa to keep touch with the top 5, and again, they're confirmed to play in Europe again next year. And Unai Emery's response was very different to Nottingham Forest's response. He was delighted to get into Europe again. And I think that's really nice to see.
I feel like Villa had their slump and have now sort of started to pick up again, whereas Forest are just in the middle of that slump. It's sort of tailing off their season. So, yeah, no, it is great. And Villa have really deserved to be in Europe. And, yeah, fair play to them.
I think so. We're going to come on to talk about United and Spurs now. And this whole, this Big Six conversation we have, we talk about teams in the Big Six.
Yeah.
And that kind of is determined by the amount of money and the amount of, commercial revenue a team is. But In terms of football, I think we can kind of move on from that.
I think rightly so. Both United and Spurs very much mid-table clubs at best at the moment.
At best. At the moment, they're 16th and 17th in the league. Both teams lost 2-0 at home this weekend. And for United, this was their 17th league loss of the season. For Spurs, it was 20.
That's too many, isn't it?
That's far too many for a team of that size.
For clubs of that size and stature. So, Joe, Liverpool fan, how do you feel about Trent Alexander Arnold?
Oh my gosh. We should give some context before we get into this. Liverpool 2, Arsenal 2. Liverpool took a 2-0 lead at half-time. Arteta makes some changes tactically and they salvage a draw, 2-2 draw. But the big story in this game is Trent Alexander Arnold gets brought on and receives... Fair to say a mixed reception is being generous.
Yeah.
Here.
You could definitely hear significant portions of the crowd booing him. You could also hear significant portions of the crowd cheering him.
I think this is
like
a thing.
It was definitely there, so you feel like the fans are divided on what they think, but enough that makes me think, what is going on at Anfield? This is ridiculous. After the season you've had, Trent Alexander-Arnold has been such a great servant to your club, and yes, he is moving to a European rival, whatever that means, but he has been a good servant to the club. I don't understand why so many of the fans are being so visceral in their in their hatred of him leaving.
I watched the game yesterday and I genuinely felt uncomfortable.
Yeah,
like watching a player that I've loved for the last 9 years play at Anfield. Such a great player to watch, really creative. I don't think anyone expected it to be this level. I think we all kind of thought there was going to be some sort of response. You know, when a player comes back, you boo them initially and then it's fine.
And then you thought it might be a reaction to him coming on and then everyone forget about it. And then it's fine. Yeah.
And it did feel a bit like as the game progressed, the boos got quieter. A lot of the narrative has been like, who are you to tell a Liverpool fan how they should feel about one of their favourite players leaving, in the same way that I wouldn't tell you. Just as an example, I wouldn't tell you how to feel about a Stoke legend leaving.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think that for me, what it boils down to is there's feelings and then there's actions, isn't there? And I think it is fair if you feel that Trent Alexander-Arnold has ripped the soul out of your club by doing what he's doing. That's a feeling that maybe you can't get away from. But then how you respond to that feeling, the responsibility you show as to whether to just be quiet and with grace let him leave and not say anything. If you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Or do you boo? Do you do whatever? Do you go on message boards? And I think that's it. If there's anything that's a recurring theme of our podcast, Joe, it's that us reminding ourselves that these people that we idolise, well, for starters, we shouldn't, but these people on the pitch, they are humans and they have families and children and all that sort of stuff. And, we should be remembering that when we go and sit in the stands, and we should be treating them like fellow humans too.
Yeah, absolutely, we should.
I think this is a really good time, Joe, for us to slightly switch gears and talk about the larger topic that we wanted to talk about, which is looking at youth and young players particularly. Now, we revere young footballers in this day and age, and I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is a prime example of that, isn't he? He was a young player coming through, he's gone through the Liverpool Academy, all of that stuff. I think that that's something that I think all football fans can relate to. Whatever club you support, you love it when the young lad or the young glass comes through the ranks, through the academy and all that stuff.
You really do. I grew up in Crewe, and I had a season ticket at Crewe Alexandra, who for years were known for producing players in their academy. Dean Ashton being probably the most famous example of that. Danny Murphy as well came through the Crewe ranks. And I remember there would always be that conversation of who is the next young player that's going to come through at Crewe.
And we've joked in the past about, players like Lamine Yamal. Jude Bellingham was another one where journalists struggle to say their name without either pre or post mentioning how old they are. Lamine Yamal.
It's part of their name, isn't
17, yeah, exactly. But there is something in this that maybe we, and us the media, we're included in this, maybe we revere these young footballers far too much. Now, I had a really great chat with Joe Lowther from Kick. Joe is an amazing guy. And Kick do some amazing work with young people in schools, in colleges. They do holiday clubs and all that sort of stuff through football. But he's got a really interesting take on what it means to be a young footballer, but also what it means to be a young person in today's society.
Great, let's hear it.
Joe Lowther from Kick, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Very excited to be here. Can't wait to hang out. It's going to be great.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Big Man Up Top. Let's talk about Kick. What do you guys do? I mean, great name, by the way.
Kick's mission is to transform young people's lives with God's love through sport and support. So what that means is that we go into schools and we do 4 things. Physical education with 25 different sports. Street dance with 15 different dance disciplines. Thirdly, solutions-focused mentoring of the most challenging kids in the school. And fourthly, schools-based chaplaincy. So we do those 4 different services in schools and, in a genuinely holistic way with the physical, mental and spiritual. And then we partner with local churches to upskill volunteers to run extended sport or dance coaching in the evenings or in the weekends called Kick Academies, where we do a bit of coaching, an inspirational thought from the Bible, and then an application of matches or routines. We now work with 28,000 children and young people a week across 8 regions of the UK, and we're seeing children and young people's lives impacted on a regular basis.
That's amazing. I can imagine that these kind of resources is something that schools and councils and whatnot are just absolutely crying out for at the moment.
There is a real sense of hopelessness that children and young people experience. 1 in 3 15-year-olds identify with a mental health condition. 95% of children and young people are not in church in the UK. 3 out of 5 16 to 24-year-olds now say they feel disillusioned with their lives. And so what we're just seeing is local authorities, schools, not quite sure how to deal with this sense of hopelessness. And so it's part of our vision to give children and young people a hope for the future, as well as a joy in the present. And we feel by providing a physical, mental and spiritual response to what they've gone through in recent years, that is a helpful way to address some of the challenges that they face. And we are excited to do it. We've grown from a little organisation of 7 people into an organisation of 97 people across the last 8 years. To see that growth, we know we've been blessed, and honestly, we feel that we've been anointed by God to reach a generation of young people within a generation of time.
When it comes to young players in the game of football, we really over glamorize and revere the ages of young footballers. We were talking about Lamine Yamal is a really great example. What a player he is, but nobody can say Lamine Yamal without saying Lamine Yamal 17, just as a reminder of how young he is. This isn't anything new. It happened with Neymar and Messi and Michael Owen and all of that. So what I want to know is, in your opinion, why do you think that we really revere the young when it comes to football?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, if I take 2 examples from my favourite club in the world, Manchester United, if I take David Beckham, David Beckham breaks onto the scene with the class of 92, whole group of homegrown players that went on to win everything in the treble. But the year before that, Beckham bursts onto the scene with England, plays really well, but gets sent off in 98 and costs arguably England a place of progressing through to the final stages against Argentina. And he was vilified. The press absolutely hounded him for a good 6 months. There were effigies of him burnt and all kinds of different things. But he, through character, turned that around. But he went from the high to the low. And another example, Wayne Rooney, he scored on his Premiership debut at 16 against Arsenal before they went on that 49-game unbeaten run. What a player. But we built him up, didn't we? And then we cut him down again after getting sent off against Portugal. And And so I think what happens is we look for a Messiah, basically, and we look to youth as the next sensation. People are quick to and hungry to identify this is going to be the greatest player ever. We lift them up, and then we just can't wait to slam them down when we realize they don't meet all of our needs. They're not the, if you like, true Messiah. And again, I wish Lamine Yamal all the best, but I suspect there'll be bumps in the road, highs and lows, but hopefully highs again.
Going from that thing of where in football we do revere the young, I feel like there's a different attitude towards young people in society, and that maybe we can look down our noses at young people.
Oh, absolutely. We see that. And from one generation to the next, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Every generation's got their own hang-ups, their own challenges to face. But God is so great in connecting with us in each generation, no matter what kind of culture or different ways that we grow up, different thoughts we have. But I do think society can look down on young people. Equally, I think young people can look down on society. There's a lot to be nervous of as a child or young person. And it's important to try and understand what makes Gen Z and Gen Alpha tick so that we can work well together and complement one another in a kind of all-age type environment.
What can we be learning from these young people?
The generation coming through in their teens and 20s is Gen Z. There are 4 things that they're really interested in and 4 things that have impacted their lives. So safety is really important to them, but also resilience. And so that's quite a challenge for them to wrestle with. But there's been seismic change as well for them that they've gone through. That's the 3rd thing. But also a whole new set of opportunity through digital and media opportunities, lots of new technology. And so these 4 things around safety, resilience, seismic change, and opportunity are at their fingertips, and they're things that they're interested in. So how can we help them? Well, firstly, we can listen to them and listen to their fears. And secondly, we can encourage them through those fears to help build resilience. With regard to opportunity, we can train them and enable them, empower them to grow up effectively. And then finally, we can release them. It's something very important to that particular generation to be empowered. And so what are the ways that we can actively engage in church culture? You know, I believe in the priesthood of all believers.
I remember hearing a while ago somebody talking about how we need to shift the thinking from, the children and young people being the future of the church to being the church. They are just as much the church as we are.
They are 20% of our present and 100% of our future. And we really need to think about this. In 2 Timothy, it talks about how do we entrust to the next generation the truths that have been revealed to us. How does Paul give that to Timothy, give that on to other reliable people to then share that with others? This 4-generational approach. How do we encourage and pass on what we've learned, what God has revealed to us, the truths in Scripture that are true? A number of the places of the anxiety for these young people is actually an absence of God. And I've been encouraged with the recent Bible Society information that the upcoming generations are much more open to spirituality and faith and are investigating faith for themselves in a way that millennial generation and Gen X were much less interested in exploring, much more committed to atheism as a default. Gen Z and Gen Alpha, all the data is showing that they are much more interested to explore something more, because atheism is so hollow, it offers nothingness. Whereas Christianity offers a hope for the future and a joy in the present. And that is why we care a lot about that at Kick.
The final question, this podcast is called The Big Man Up Top. We love a big man up top on The Big Man Up Top. If you were to put together an all-time 11 and you got to be the manager, who would be your big man up top, Joe?
Oh, I love this. I mean, when I think of big men up top, I think of Duncan Ferguson. or Peter Crouch, or Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Romelu Lukaku. There are so many, Drogba. There's so many good players on there. But I guess I'd have to say it's very difficult to see past Alan Shearer. And if Shearer had come to United to partner with Cantona, with Giggs, Beckham, Keane and Scholes in that midfield, that front six would have been insane. So I always regret that Shearer never came to Man United. I think there'd be a number more league titles for United if that had happened. So I think I'd have to go with Alan Shearer.
Joe Lowther from Kick, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to chat with you.
Thanks a lot, Ed. Loved it.
Great chat there with Joe Lowther from Kick, Ed. And if you want to hear more from Joe Lowther, he's actually going to be appearing on another UCB podcast called Gospel Entrepreneurs, and that will be airing on the 3rd of June, I believe.
Very good, yes.
But I think there's kind of two angles we can look at out of this conversation about youth. And I think we could look at this from a perspective of being almost like elders. Like, you know, the word elder kind of sounds like you're really old.
Elder statesman.
You're really old, you're really wise, you have a lot of things to say. But I think this role of elders is kind of anyone that is looking to mentor people that are younger than you, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think particularly when we're talking about this in a church context is actually, as Joe mentioned in that interview, young people are going through, you know, quite a lot at the moment. You know, they've had the upheaval of COVID and all that sort of stuff, just as we all had. But they've gone through some quite crucial life moments, pandemics and international wars and all that sort of stuff. And actually, really what we know from statistics is that young people are finding life difficult, I think, more than they maybe did in previous generations. And yet at the same time, they're also looking for faith in a way that previous generations haven't either. So actually, it's an amazing opportunity for us that are, like I say, slightly older. And I include you in this, Joe. You know,
Thank you very much.
Somebody who's even, you know, in their late 20s. You don't have to be an old person to be an elder, to be a mentor. And actually, we've got something that we can give to younger people. We can be patient with them, people who've walked through life and have the wisdom of maybe doing stuff wrong as well. And, you know, heed my advice. I've done this and I've made a hash of this.
And how do you think that looks practically? Like, do you think this always looks like having a conversation? Or do you think sometimes it's just being around those older people that have been through life?
Proverbs 22:6 talks about teaching a child in the way they should go. That's a really great verse that talks about, you know, there is a bit of instruction there, but actually some of it is just the ministry of presence as well. It's just about being there, being in somebody's life. You know, particularly young lads really struggle with father figures these days, you know, in increasing numbers. Actually, half the time it's just having somebody there, somebody who's going to show up when they say they're going to show up. I would just say definitely make sure you're involved in your church in that way that you can have an impact. Look at the way that Jesus dealt with his disciples as well. Obviously, a lot of the time he was teaching them, a lot of the time he was instructing them, but also times he was just hanging out with them. He was having dinner, he was going to social events with them and that sort of thing.
But at the same time, I think there was a really good point that Joe made about how kind of he spoke about these generations. So you have millennials. I think I'm just on the cusp of being a millennial.
Yeah.
Then you have Gen Z, you have Gen Alpha, all who have different experiences, different problems. I think the big one, probably looking at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, is the whole thing of social media. Yeah. The social media that I grew up with is very different to the space it is right now. Yeah. So although you have this kind of authority to speak into their lives, it's also having that recognition that they do have different problems to what we had at that age. I wonder if it's worth us having a little look at the other way around. If you are kind of a younger person, if you're in your teens, early 20s, and you have these older people in your life mentoring to you, what advice would you have in being receptive to that?
Well, I would just say, like, don't be afraid to speak up. 1 Timothy 4 verse 12 says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. You have something valuable to contribute, but it's a responsibility thing as well. Like, step up and contribute. We want you here. You're in the family. You're in the church community. Come and be a part of it. So I would say, the Bible's really clear. If you're young, be aspirational be patient as well, but bring what you have. You know what you have, and if you don't know, ask people around you as well. If you don't know what you have to bring to the table, ask at the elder people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, just because someone is older than you, has maybe experienced life a bit more than you, doesn't always necessarily mean that what they're saying to you is right. I think it's important. The Bible is here to kind of help us navigate life. And if someone has said something to you from a position of authority that you're like, oh, I'm not entirely sure about that, go to the Bible.
Go to the Word of God, absolutely. That's the key thing, it really is. We look at the Bible, exactly what you said earlier about generations. The Bible's really clear that we are to take from different generations, and we are to build upon each other. We are to make sure we're supporting each other. And so, yeah, I think anything that we can do to take wisdom from other generations, and that goes both ways as well, the elders learning from the youngsters and vice versa, I think that's going to build a stronger and healthier church. There's been a few other bits of news in football this week, Joe, that I kind of felt like we can't really finish the episode without talking about.
We're coming to the end of the season. Obviously, moves are happening.
Yeah.
So today, it's been widely reported by David Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano, the big two, that Carlo Ancelotti to Brazil is happening.
Wow.
This has been widely reported for a while. This seems like the next step for his career. He's done everything he can at Real Madrid. He wants an international job, and he's going to lead Brazil at the next World Cup. And I think it's quite a nice appointment.
Feels about right to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was quite surprised he's not actually done it before.
It feels like he has, and apparently not. So at the same time, obviously Ancelotti leaving Real Madrid, they're going to need a new manager.
So who've they got?
Well, in unrelated news, Xabi Alonso has confirmed he's leaving Bayer Leverkusen.
Oh, wow.
No idea where he's going. No idea where Trent Alexander Arnold is going.
Yeah, we'll see where they end up. Also, as well, Harry Kane, who's finally got his hands on a trophy, hasn't he?
He's lifted his first ever piece of silverware, if you don't count the Audi Cup.
Yeah, of course. We're happy for him, aren't we?
We are very happy. Him and Michael Elise were seen charging around with massive pints of beer. Very German. Another thing that happened in this game, Thomas Muller played his last ever game for Bayern Munich. So in summary, a massive congratulations to Harry Kane on his first ever trophy. Now, speaking of English strikers, Ed.
Oh, okay.
How are you doing with this week's trivia?
Oh, not very well at all. Not very well at all. My laptop's died, so
So you can't have a Google.
I can't have a Google. Tell me the question again. Now I'm getting up the
pass
list.
me your phone.
I'm getting up the list of Bible books, Joe. Right, go on.
Gosh,
Go on.
well, I'm going to move around and observe your phone. The question is, which English striker who ended his playing career at an Australian club represented England at every level from under 16 to senior team and won the UEFA Champions League with 2 different clubs?
I am really struggling with this, Joe. For some reason, I'm completely blanking.
English strikers.
Yeah, I'm completely blanking on English strikers that have won the Champions League. Like, did Craig Bellamy win it twice? He's not even English.
Is there a book of Craig?
Is there a book of Craig? It is so far off the pace.
I've got an extra clue if you would
I
like.
would really appreciate the extra clue.
So this person played, like I say, from England under 16 all the way to the senior team, where he played 26 times for the senior team.
Oh, okay.
Scoring 8 goals. He's represented Great Britain in the 2012 Olympics.
Oh, goodness me. I'm really struggling. And it's one of those, it's very annoying. As soon as you tell me, I'm gonna know.
I think you will be quite annoyed, yeah.
I'm gonna be really annoyed with this one.
Goodness me. I think producer Anthony might have it.
Jermaine Defoe. No, there's no book of Jermaine.
Yeah, you're allowed to look at the Bible if you want.
James Cleverley was in that team.
Who's James Cleverley?
Tom Cleverley. No.
This is an absolute mess.
Don't put this in.
James Cleverley.
He's a politician.
What's it? Well, we're definitely keeping that in. James Cleverley.
James Cleverley. He was, wasn't he like foreign secretary or something?
Yeah, British politician and Army Reserve officer. Home Secretary. November 2023.
James Cleverley. Oh, gosh.
Goodness me.
As you can tell, my head's gone. Anthony, who is it?
think it might be Daniel Sturridge.
Daniel Sturridge.
Daniel Sturridge is correct.
Oh, well done, Anthony.
Well
You got
done.
me a point. Thank
No,
you. Well done.
Absolutely not. Daniel Sturridge won the Champions League in 2012 with Chelsea and 2019 with Liverpool. He finished at Perth Glory.
Superb. Well done. Well done.
Well, thank you so much for listening to the Big Man Up Top. If you want... Why are you
Sorry,
laughing?
I can't get over James Cleverly.
Goodness me. If you want to get in touch with the show, please ping us an email to podcasts@ucb.co.uk. Please follow, subscribe, and give us some good reviews. We like 5-star reviews.
We do.
This will help us get the word out. And also, if you've enjoyed this, please tell your mates. A huge thank you to our producer Anthony for all his hard work behind the scenes. And there will be a new episode next Tuesday.
We've got a really special one next week, Joe.
Yes, can't wait.
See you next week.
Bye.